sure everything's working right. So we gonna be fine out in a few seconds.
Guyana in possession of a loaded handgun, $3,000 in cash and a fixed-blade hunting knife. ICE arrests criminal alien serving as Des Moines Public Schools superintendent. Prior weapons charges and in possession of loaded handgun at time of arrest. Guyana national tried to evade arrest. Officers discovered his abandoned vehicle in a wooded area. Photo 1, September 26, 2025. Photo 2, February 2020. Photo 3, loaded handgun found in vehicle September 26, 2025. Des Moines, Iowa. Today, ICE Des Moines arrested Ian Andre Roberts, a criminal illegal alien from Guyana in possession of a loaded handgun, $3,000 in cash and a fixed-blade hunting knife. At the time of his arrest, Roberts was working as the superintendent of Des Moines Public Schools despite being an illegal alien with a final order of removal and no work authorization. During a targeted enforcement operation on September 26, 2025, officers approached Roberts in his vehicle after identifying himself, but he sped away. Officers later discovered his vehicle abandoned near a wooded area. State Patrol assisted in locating the subject, and he was taken into IC custody. Roberts has existing weapon possession charges from February 5, 2020. Roberts entered the United States in 1999 on a student visa and was given a final order of removal by an immigration judge in May of 2024. The investigation into how Roberts acquired the handgun is being turned over to the ATF. It is a violation of federal law for those in the U.S. without legal status to possess a firearm and ammunition. This suspect was arrested in possession of a loaded weapon in a vehicle provided by Des Moines Public Schools after fleeing federal law enforcement, said ICRO St. Paul Field Office Director Sam Olson. This should be a wake-up call for our communities to the great work that our officers are doing every day to remove public safety threats. How this illegal alien was hired without work authorization, a final order of removal, and a prior weapons charge is beyond comprehension and should alarm the parents of that school district. ICE is grateful for the assistance of the Iowa State Patrol in apprehending this subject. Members of the public can report immigration crimes or suspicious activity by dialing the IC tip line at 860.
If you're a rat. But you might be a rat. I don't know. It ain't my business. I was looking like the government shut down for real.
Congress has less than 24 hours to avert a shutdown. The odds don't look good. By Sarah Ferris. Arlette Signs.
Come on, bro.
With less than 24 hours until a possible government shutdown, Senate Republicans will give Democrats a final chance to support their plan to keep the lights on at midnight. But inside the Capitol, few believe that Democrats are ready to yield. The bitter stalemate between Republicans and Democrats in recent weeks, largely centered around billions of dollars in enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies, now appears likely to result in the first government funding lapse of President Donald Trump's second administration. Any hope for an 11th-hour deal was lost Monday afternoon, after a high-stakes meeting in the Oval Office with President Donald Trump and top congressional leaders led to no progress in the funding talks. Now ahead of that midnight deadline, the Senate is scheduled to vote at least once more on a GOP funding plan that Democrats have already rejected. The move by Senate Majority Leader John Thune is intended to maximize pressure on his counterpart, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who have so far blocked a plan for a status quo funding bill without commitments to extend the Obamacare subsidies. Schumer, for his part, said the outcome is up to Trump and his GOP leaders. It's now in the president's hands. He can avoid a shutdown if he gets the Republican leader to go along with what we want, Schumer said Monday night. hours after Congress's top 4 party leaders met with Trump for a last-ditch meeting at the White House. But Republicans have accused Schumer of holding government funding hostage over their demands, and insist any negotiations on those tax credits should not be tied to keeping the government open. Even one of the Senate GOP's biggest advocates for extending those credits, Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, said he doesn't think Democrats should force the government into a shutdown over the issue. "I don't understand what shutting down government has to do with that," Hawley said. "My message to them is like, hey, I will work with you on all of those things. I think there's a lot of common ground, but let's leave the government funding out of it." Related article: Who would get blamed for a shutdown? Thune and his GOP conference have long believed that Schumer will cave, especially as the White House's own budget office has threatened mass firings if Congress allows a shutdown and cedes some of its spending authority to the executive branch. And if a shutdown does happen, the prevailing sense among congressional Republicans is that voters will blame Democrats for their demands, not the GOP for a no-strings-attached funding deal. If you want to have that debate, that's a debate to have. You don't hold government funding hostage for it, said GOP Senator Eric Schmidt of Missouri. Chuck Schumer is afraid of his own shadow, and he doesn't want to be perceived as working with President Trump, Schmidt said. That's a shame, because I think the American people are going to suffer because of it. Asked if there's any room for negotiations on Obamacare subsidies by Tuesday's midnight shutdown deadline, Republican Senator John Kennedy said, "Not unless Chuck stops smoking wizard weed. We can negotiate the Obamacare subsidies and reform thereof, but we can't do it by midnight tomorrow night," Kennedy added. That's what Senator Schumer demanded, and it's a very unserious proposal. Chuck wants a shutdown. Democrats have made clear for weeks they wanted a health care concession from Trump in exchange for helping to keep the government open. In recent days, Schumer and Jeffries have argued that any agreement on health care, such as those subsidies, needs to go into law. They believe it's the only way to make sure the president keeps his word. "We've got to deal with the health care collapse. We're going off a cliff, and we can't leave Vermonters and Americans high and dry," Democratic Senator Peter Welch said. "We need the president to acknowledge that he has to abide by what Congress authorizes for spending." Welch expressed skepticism about the two sides reaching a deal before midnight tomorrow. "I think the odds are against it right now, and I say that with a lot of regret," Welch said of the possibility of reaching an agreement, adding, "My hope is we'll keep the lights on, and if they go off, I want them to get back on as soon as possible." Senator John Fetterman, the lone Democrat who voted for the GOP's funding plan during a failed vote last week, said he's worried for the millions of people whose lives could be disrupted by a shutdown. "You're running the risk of plunging our nation into chaos. Millions and millions of lives will be upended," he said. "What kind of messages does that send to our country, and to our allies and to our enemies?" Senate GOP plan. Keep voting until Democrats relent. Republican leaders in the Senate are settling on a plan. Keep voting on a 7-week funding extension until Democrats eventually capitulate. The belief among top Republicans is that Democrats will start to bend after hearing public outcry over a loss of critical government services, and as federal employees get furloughed, or even fired. The GOP bill, which passed the House earlier this month largely along party lines, would extend government funding until late November, and does not include extraneous policy provisions. But along with the expiring Obamacare subsidies, Democrats have demanded a reverse to Medicaid cuts enacted under Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and to constrain his ability to cut federal spending without Capitol Hill's consent. Thune and House Speaker Mike Johnson, emerging from Monday afternoon's closed-door meeting with Trump, said that they believe the Democratic position is unsustainable, and they plan to pressure Democrats with repeated votes on the stopgap measure. Yes, Senate Majority Whip John Barrasso told CNN when asked if they would keep scheduling votes on the GOP plan. Barrasso said they would continue this approach until the government is opened again as a result of ending the Schumer shutdown. Leaving the Senate Republican leadership meeting on Monday night, Senator Markwayne Mullin agreed with the tactic. "We're going to put it back on the floor. If the package fails to advance on Tuesday, there's no other option," Mullin said. Senator Kevin Cramer, a North Dakota Republican, predicted that even if there is a shutdown, Democrats won't be able to hold out for long. I think my sense is if there's a shutdown it'll be short because I don't believe that 47 Democratic senators want to walk the plank on something that, I mean, let's face it, funding the government for Democrats is like falling off a log, he said. It's what they do. It's what they love. So I don't see even Chuck Schumer holding it all together for very long. CNN's Allison Main contributed to this report. Up next. Brace yourselves. Government shutdown threat deepens as Capitol Hill digs in. 6-minute read. Here's what is so different about the brewing government shutdown. 8-minute read. The last government shutdown. With less than 24 hours until a possible government shutdown, Senate Republicans will give Democrats a final chance to support their plan to keep the lights on at midnight. But inside the Capitol, few believe that Democrats are ready to yield. Hegseth addresses military as government faces midnight shutdown.
Okay. What about the rest, Hegseth? What about the rest? What's going on? Oh my gosh. Here we go.
Hegseth addresses military as government faces midnight shutdown. Where things stand. A defense meeting. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is delivering remarks to generals and admirals gathered from around the world for a surprise event he initiated to reinforce his vision for the Department of Defense. President Donald Trump will speak afterwards. A race against the clock. The federal government will shut down at midnight unless Congress reaches a deal on funding. A state of play. Although Republicans control Capitol Hill and the White House, they need at least 7 Democrats in the Senate to join them to pass a spending package under the chamber's rules. Tell us, previous shutdowns have stalled food inspections, canceled immigration hearings, and delayed some lending to homebuyers. Would a shutdown affect you? Share your story here. 4 minutes ago, combat troops will have to meet highest male standard, Hegseth says. From CNN's Haley Britsky. Army soldiers rest on a tank during combat training in Killeen, Texas, on June 3rd. Brandon Bell/Getty Images. The U.S. military will require those in combat jobs meet this highest male standard only. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced on Tuesday, saying that every service member in a combat job in the military must score above a 70% in the male standard of their service's physical fitness test. Some background. Hegseth has long railed against allegedly lowered standards for women to be in combat roles, in books and podcast appearances, and during his confirmation hearing at the beginning of this year. When pressed by lawmakers previously to offer evidence of standards being lowered, he did not. When it comes to combat arms units, and there are many different stripes across our joint force, the era of politically correct, overly sensitive, don't hurt anyone's feelings leadership ends right now, Hegseth said Tuesday. At every level, either you can meet the standard, either you can do the job, either you are disciplined, fit, and trained, or you are out.
Oh, that's it? That's it. He said, yeah, out. It's 1, 2, 3 strikes, yeah, out. That's it. Wow.
Second detainee dies as result of Dallas IC facility shooting. By Priscilla Alvarez. Holly Yen. Updated 20 minutes ago. CNN. A second detainee who was shot at an Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility in Dallas last week has died, according to a Homeland Security official and LULAC national spokesperson David Cruz. Miguel Angel Garcia Hernandez, a 32-year-old Mexican immigrant who was one of 3 IC detainees shot in the September 24th attack, died after having been hospitalized following the shooting, the sources said. My husband Miguel was a good man, a loving father, and the provider for our family, his wife Stephanie Galfini, said in a statement provided by LULAC on Tuesday. We had just bought our first home together, and he worked hard every single day to make sure our children had what they needed. His death is a senseless tragedy that has left our family shattered, the widow said. I do not know how to explain to our children that their father is gone. A gunman perched on the roof of another building fired indiscriminately at the ICE field office in Dallas, striking 3 detainees, who were in a van out of the facility's controlled entrance, the Department of Homeland Security said. One of the detainees, Norlan Guzman Fuentes, a 37-year-old El Salvadoran national, died the day of the shooting, ICE said Monday. One detainee remains in a hospital, according to the official. The shooter, Joshua John, 29, died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound shortly after the shooting, authorities have said. Garcia Hernandez, who was originally from San Luis Potosí, Mexico, had lived in the U.S. since he was 13 years old, and worked as a painter, Gaufani previously told CNN. On August 8, he was arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence and booked into a local jail. The next day, immigration authorities detained him. A source familiar with the investigation said Garcia Hernandez was in the U.S. illegally and was previously convicted of giving fictitious information, evading arrest, driving while intoxicated, and fleeing police. This is a developing story and will be updated. Correction. An earlier version of this story gave the wrong day that I announced the death of Guzman Fuentes. Up next. Detainees shot in attack on Dallas IC facility identified. Source says. Here's what we know about the victims. 5-minute read. What we know about the suspect arrested in the deaths of an abandoned Tennessee baby's family members. 5-minute read. Marine veteran.
I'm gonna update this.
Investigators are searching for a motive in shooting at Michigan church. Here's what we know. By Zoe Sotilli. Updated 1 hour ago. Church members and residents reunite. 2 days after a devastating attack on a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints shattered a small Michigan community, investigators are combing the wreckage of the burned-out chapel for clues that might help them make sense of what the FBI calls a targeted act of violence. The attacker, an Iraq War veteran who had made disparaging comments about the LDS faith in the weeks before unleashing bullets and fire on its adherents, drove his car into the chapel, where he opened fire and set ablaze the building where improvised explosive devices later were found. 4 people were killed and 8 injured before the attacker was killed in a shootout with police. And it could have been worse had it not been for the heroic response, officials said. Here's what we know about the latest attack on a place of worship in the United States. Attacked during the Sunday service. Congregants had gathered at the Grand Blanc Church on McCandlish Road, a quiet stretch dotted with houses near a sprawling golf course and lake, for the 10 a.m. service. It was a monthly fast Sunday, when LDS members around the world are encouraged to forego 2 meals and donate the food, or the money they would have spent on food, to the poor. Related article. How the mass shooting and a devastating fire unfolded at a Michigan church. Worshippers by late morning had finished the sacrament, the first half of the 2-hour service, after which some congregants leave, when we heard a big bang and the doors flew open, a churchgoer named Paula told CNN affiliate WXV. The attacker had rammed his 4-door pickup truck into the front of the chapel. Then he fired several rounds from an assault weapon at worshippers before somehow setting the building on fire, police said, sending huge plumes of black smoke billowing into the sky. Congregants shielded children and helped them move to safety, said Grand Blanc Township Police Chief William Renai. The church was declared a total loss, ravaged by the fire. Mark Van Cleve/AP. And medical residents attending the service jumped into action, acting as first responders to help the wounded. Striking nurses from a nearby hospital also left the picket line and ran to the church to try to help. Those on the scene were absolute heroes, going in and out of the fire to drag people out, helping each other take care of the victims on the scene, said Dr. Michael Danick, medical chief of staff at Henry Ford Genesis Hospital. The mass shooting and fire could have been deadlier if not for the bravery of those who risked their lives to save others, Danick said. Police were on the scene less than a minute after the first 911 call, Renai said. Sanford was killed in the parking lot 8 minutes after police arrived. The FBI is leading the investigation. Related article. What we know about Michigan church shooter Thomas Sanford. Shooter was a Iraq veteran who disparaged LDS Church. The man police say committed the attack, Thomas Sanford, 40, had served in the Marines and worked as a mechanic in Operation Iraqi Freedom. An avid hunter who grew up in Flint, Sanford was known in the small Michigan town of Burton for his distinctive pickup truck, which he often drove with 2 American flags flying from the bed behind him. It seems to be the same truck he used to ram into the church. Sanford was married and had a young son born with a rare genetic disorder. Social media accounts linked to Sanford's family show. The family launched a GoFundMe campaign to fundraise for treatment for the child's congenital hyperinsulinism, which required a lengthy hospital stay and surgeries to remove portions of the pancreas, according to a family Facebook page documenting the difficult journey. Sanford was a fun-loving family guy. Longtime friend Kara Pattison told CNN affiliate WW Local 4. But he also harbored unkind feelings toward certain groups, and definitely talked about groups of people in ways that weren't acceptable, Pattison said. People hold signs Monday in support of the community after the shooting and fire at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc. Emily Elkinen/Getty Images. A makeshift memorial sits Monday on the street next to police tape near the church. Emily Elkinen/Getty Images. That included openly declaring his hatred for the LDS Church. Chris Johns, a city council candidate in Burton, met Sanford on the campaign trail about a week before the attack. He told CNN. Sanford asked him 2 questions. What are your thoughts on guns? And what are your thoughts on Mormons? Johns could sense long-standing anger from Sanford about the LDS Church, he said. It was a person who really had an animus towards the LDS Church. Sanford was an individual who hated people of the Mormon faith. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told Fox News on Monday without further explanation. Sanford is registered to vote in Michigan, which does not have partisan voter registration. A Trump-Vance campaign sign was on his home's fence in June. A Google Street View photo shows, and he once wore a Trump shirt. A social media photo from 2019 shows. Related article. Visualizing how mass shootings in 2025 compare with past years. Victims suffered gunshot wounds and smoke inhalation. Victims of the attack, including children, have not been publicly identified. Henry Ford Genesis Hospital received 8 patients, ages 6 to 78. 5, including one who died, had gunshot wounds, while 3 suffered smoke inhalation, said Danick, the hospital's medical chief of staff. One shooting victim was in critical condition Monday with bullet wounds to the chest and abdomen, while another was in critical condition with gunshot wounds to the abdomen, Danick said. Another man was shot in the leg, and a child who was shot was stabilized and transferred, Danick said. One smoke inhalation patient taken to Henry Ford Genesis was still intubated Monday, while 2 had been discharged, Danick said. I feel so bad about the families that were affected by this, aside from ours, Sanford's father, Tom, told CNN affiliate WXYZ. We are beside ourselves. CNN has reached out to the shooter's father for comment. Explosive devices found as FBI leads probe. It's unclear how Sanford set off the massive inferno that consumed the church. Police believe he used an accelerant, like gasoline, said James Dare, special agent in charge of the Detroit Field Division of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Improvised explosive devices were found at...
And this is why I gotta be out here speaking up against these white terrorists, because these white terrorists been white terrorizing.
At the scene after the fire was extinguished.
The terrorists is terrorizing.
Extinguished, Dare said. Investigators are working to catalog evidence from the ruins of the church and interviewing dozens of victims and witnesses, with the help of victim specialists, child advocates, forensic interviewers, and local partners, according to FBI Acting Special Agent in Charge Reuben Coleman. Michigan State Police patrol a street Sunday in Burton, Michigan. Emily Elkinen/Getty Images. They're getting help from a world-renowned specialized rapid response team from ATF that has helped in high-profile crisis investigations, including the 9/11 World Trade Center attack and the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. Such a team can include explosive specialists, bomb technicians, forensic chemists, and canine handlers. They have been used all over the world, and they come from places as far as California, Hawaii, and they're here in Michigan now, Dare said. The investigation includes a deep dive into the attacker's possible motive, involving dozens of law enforcement personnel across Michigan. Investigators are searching his home as authorities try to get search warrants for digital media. A law enforcement source told CNN. As the work continues, this evil act shouldn't define the community, the police chief said. This is not Grand Blanc. This does not define Grand Blanc in who we are, Renai said in a news conference. We are a community, and I am confident that together we're going to build a stronger community due to this incident. CNN's Danya Gaynor, Holly Yen, Josh Campbell, Elizabeth Wolfe, Lee Waldman, Chris Boyett and Lily Houghton contributed to this report. Up next, how the mass shooting and a devastating fire unfolded at a Michigan church. 6-minute read. Multiple victims in Michigan church shooting. Church on fire, police say. 1-minute read. What we know about Michigan. Trump posts racist AI-generated video of Schumer and Jeffries ahead of looming government shutdown. By Kitmar. 10 hours ago, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. As the U.S. government barrels toward a shutdown, President Donald Trump shared a racist video on social media, which appears to be AI-generated, depicting House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries wearing a sombrero and a mustache and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer speaking in a fake voice. Jeffries and Schumer met with Trump just hours before at the White House to discuss the looming shutdown. In the video, Schumer is depicted.
Hold on, bro.
Depicted as arguing for undocumented immigrants to get free health care, because minority voters hate Democrats, and they could use the votes in the next election. As
What's going on, bro?
mariachi music plays in the background of the video, the fake Schumer voice says, "There's no way to sugarcoat it. Nobody likes Democrats anymore." The fake voice goes on to echo false GOP claims about Democratic policies and slam liberal leaders as woke. The video was posted on Trump's X account as well as his official Truth Social account. CNN has reached out to the White House for comment. A still from the AI-generated video posted by Donald Trump on X. X/@RealDonaldTrump. Shortly after Trump posted the video, Jeffries wrote on X, "Bigotry will get you nowhere. Cancel the cuts. Lower the cost. Save health care. We are not backing down." Schumer followed moments later, commenting on X, "If you think your shutdown is a joke, it just proves what we all know. You can't negotiate. You can only throw tantrums." The White House meeting between Trump and the two Democratic leaders also included Senate Majority Leader John Thune and House Speaker Mike Johnson. It ended without a deal. Government funding is set to run out Tuesday at midnight. Democratic leaders have demanded negotiations on health care funding in exchange for keeping the government open. Related article. The federal government could shut down soon. Here's what you need to know. Speaking to reporters at the White House, Schumer called Trump the ultimate decision maker and said, "If he will accept some of the things we ask, which we think the American people are for on health care and on rescissions, he can avoid a shutdown, but there's still large differences between us." In the social media post, Trump offered a glimpse of his mindset towards Democrats, whom he ultimately needs to keep the government open. Earlier at the White House, Jeffries stressed that Democrats want to extend Affordable Care Act subsidies. Meanwhile, Republicans want a clean funding bill to push through Congress to keep the government open as negotiations continue. The subsidies don't expire until the end of the year. More than 20 million Americans are on the brink of experiencing dramatically increased premiums, copays and deductibles because of the Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits which benefit working-class Americans, Jeffries said. Working-class Americans, their health care, that's what we're fighting to preserve, to defend and to strengthen. Up next, brace yourselves. Government shutdown threat deepens as Capitol Hill digs in. 6-minute read. Top Democrats optimistic Trump could negotiate on health care, but not in time to avert a shutdown. For minute read. Trump shares apparent AI video promoting medbed conspiracy theory. 2-minute read. GOP leaders say they will not give in to Democratic demands on...
What conspiracy theory? How many AI videos did Trump put out today? This is an AI video from yesterday.
Trump shares apparent AI video promoting medbed conspiracy theory. By Kevin Liptak. Donnie O'Sullivan. Updated September 28, 2025. President Donald Trump speaks to the President Donald Trump on Saturday shared an apparently artificially created video of himself promoting a cure-all bed with origins in conspiratorial corners of the internet. The video, which has since been deleted, was intended to resemble a Fox News segment on the show hosted by the president's daughter-in-law Lara Trump, featured an AI version of Trump promising access to new medical technology. This segment has never aired on the network. Every American will soon receive their own MedBed card, said the false rendering of Trump. With it, you'll have guaranteed access to our new hospitals led by the top doctors in the nation, equipped with the most advanced technology in the world. The MedBed conspiracy theory has spread during recent years in QAnon circles online. It is a modern manifestation of an older tradition of belief in quack doctors and miracle cures, and is rooted in deep distrust of government and medical institutions. During America's UFO spotting craze beginning in the early post-World War II period, conspiracy theories emerged that the U.S. government had reverse-engineered technology from alien craft it had secretly retrieved to create advanced healing technologies. The conspiracy theory that the government kept this healing technology secret and only provided cures to select elites played into a more widely held and still debated belief that the government was withholding information about UFOs from the public. The QAnon conspiracy theory movement emerged in 2017, and some in those circles have long believed Trump would make available this supposed secret miracle-curing technology. In the artificial video Trump posted and then deleted, he touts the benefits of the supposed therapy. These facilities are safe, modern, and designed to restore every citizen to full health and strength, the false Trump said. This is the beginning of a new era in American healthcare. More rudimentary versions of MedBed technology are promoted and sold in New Age and holistic circles online. These vendors often make dubious and unproven promises about items they sell, like healing mats, bed topper devices that are supposedly infused with magnetic and infrared technology. CNN has at times observed these vendors setting up at events attended by QAnon followers. Up next, Obama says Trump's Tylenol announcement was violence against the truth. 3-minute read. Fact check. What you need to know about Trump's misinformation about vaccines, autism, and hepatitis B.
Oh, wow. Trump is giving misinformation on vaccines. That's odd.
Fact check. What you need to know about Trump's misinformation about vaccines, autism, and hepatitis B. By Daniel Dale. September 27, 2025. President Donald Trump answers. President Donald Trump's Monday comments about autism and public health were filled with misinformation that left many doctors aghast. And not just about Tylenol. Most of the media coverage of Trump's press conference centered around his repeated advice to pregnant Americans to try to avoid taking Tylenol, which he based on a supposed link to autism that has not been proven. But the president also made a series of additional comments about autism, vaccines, and hepatitis B that ranged from unproven to misleading to false. Trump said he has been hearing that the combination measles, mumps, and rubella MMR vaccine is bad, and called to split it up into separate shots. But the combination has proven safe and effective since it was approved in the 1970s, and it has no link to autism. Trump said there is no reason to vaccinate a newborn for hepatitis B given that the virus is sexually transmitted, and he called to delay the first dose until age 12. But there is a very good reason to give the vaccine to babies. The virus can also be transmitted from mother to child at birth, and through contact with small amounts of blood on common household items. Trump greatly exaggerated how many shots babies receive. It's nowhere near the 80, he claimed, and wrongly suggested numerous different vaccines are drawn from the same vat. He greatly exaggerated how rare autism was 18 years ago. He cited the Amish as a group that don't take vaccines and don't take any pills, though many Amish people do take vaccines and pills, and added that they have essentially no autism, though there are Amish people with autism. There is no known connection between any community's autism prevalence and its use of vaccines or certain pills. And he similarly cited a rumor that Cuba has no Tylenol, though the generic version is widely available in Cuba, and that Cuba has virtually no autism, though Cuba does have autism, and though lower-income countries' low-known autism levels are generally connected with a lack of resources to diagnose cases. Below is a more detailed fact check of the president's remarks. The combination MMR vaccine has been safe and effective for decades. Trump said that, based on what I feel, children should get separate vaccinations for measles, mumps and rubella rather than the MMR combination shot that has been used in the US since the 1970s. Break up MMR, break it up, is practically a known fact that if you break it up, you're not going to have a problem. But for years we've been hearing how bad MMR is as a combination, Trump said. We have no idea what Trump has been hearing. But there's no basis for claims that the combination MMR vaccine is generally bad, or that there is a problem with it. The MMR combination has proven highly effective and very safe over its decades of US use, and it is used today in dozens of countries around the world. Some children experience side effects, but those are usually mild and temporary. Numerous studies and many decades of experience have showed us that they are safe and that they work well when given together, said Dr. Adam Ratner, a pediatric infectious diseases physician in New York City and author of the book Booster Shots: The Urgent Lessons of Measles and the Uncertain Future of Children's Health. Anti-MMR sentiment sometimes stems from a fraudulent, debunked 1990 study that wrongly suggested a connection between the MMR vaccine and autism. Subsequent studies have shown there is no connection. I'm not aware of any evidence that it's dangerous to give MMR together, said Dr. Ofer Levy, a professor of pediatrics at Harvard Medical School and director of the Precision Vaccines Program at Boston Children's Hospital. All my sources seem to say that the safest, most efficient, is to give that combination. In a social media post Friday, Trump directly addressed pregnant women and advised them to break up the MMR shot into 3 totally separate shots. But that is impossible for Americans because separate shots for measles, mumps and rubella aren't currently available in the US, as factcheck.org pointed out earlier this week. There is a good reason to vaccinate newborns for hepatitis B. Trump said, hepatitis B is sexually transmitted. There's no reason to give a baby that's almost just born hepatitis B. He also said, so I would say wait till the baby is 12 years old and formed and take hepatitis B. But there is a very good reason to give a newborn baby a dose of the hepatitis B vaccine within 24 hours of birth, as the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommends today, and the World Health Organization recommends internationally, and medical experts say it clearly does not make sense to wait until age 12. Trump didn't mention that, while hepatitis B is indeed sexually transmitted, it can also be transmitted from a mother to child at birth or through a child making contact with common household items that have tiny amounts of blood on them, such as razors, nail trimmers, or toothbrushes. And that's a major problem. Hepatitis B is much more dangerous to people who get infected as babies and young children than people who get infected as adults. CNN Health's Brenda Goodman reported last week. Nearly 90% of infants who are infected go on to develop chronic infections. People who have chronic hepatitis B infections are more likely to develop liver scarring or cancer, or need a liver transplant later in life. Roughly 1 in 4 children who are infected will die prematurely from their infections. There is an ongoing debate within a CDC vaccine advisory panel appointed by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a longtime anti-vaccine activist, about whether to recommend that the first hepatitis B shot be delayed until babies are at least 1 month old, unless their mother has tested positive for hepatitis B, in which case an immediate dose would still be recommended. The panel postponed a vote on the subject last week, and European countries generally give the first dose when babies are 2 months old, Levy noted, unless the mother has tested positive. But not all hepatitis B cases are caught during pregnancy, and even the idea of a 1 month or 2 month delay in vaccinating babies is controversial given that it would leave them unprotected during those first weeks of life, and that some may never return to get vaccinated at all. Levy said that if vaccination no longer happens when the mother and child are already in contact with the medical system at birth, the fear is some kids will fall between the cracks, with some proceeding to develop liver cancer. There is no serious suggestion of waiting until children are 12 years old, as the president recommended. Even delaying until 1 month is a mistake because of the danger of perinatal transmission. There is certainly no reason to delay to age 12, said Ratner. Babies don't get 80 different vaccines from a vat. Trump made a series of false or misleading comments about how many vaccines babies receive and the process of giving them the vaccines. At one point, Trump said babies receive 80 different vaccines from a vat, And they pump so much stuff into those beautiful little babies, it's a disgrace. I think it's very bad. They're pumping. It looks like they're pumping into a horse. You have a little child, a little fragile child, and you get a vat of 80 different vaccines, I guess 80 different blends, and they pump it in. At another point, Trump suggested that babies get all of these vaccines at once. And on the vaccines, it would be good. Instead of one visit where they pump the baby, load it up with stuff, you'll do it over a period of 4 times or 5 times. Trump's assertions are comprehensively inaccurate. Babies do not receive 80 different vaccines, or even 80 total shots, as the CDC's recommended childhood vaccination schedule shows. The number of shots that a young child ends up getting can vary, based on factors like the different vaccine formulations available, state and local requirements for daycare and school, and whether or not the child gets regular shots for the flu or COVID-19, but it's clearly not 80 shots. Levy said U.S. children generally get roughly 20 to 30 shots from birth to 15 months of age. He said Trump is correct in his general point that infants receive many shots, even counting shots given to children well beyond baby age, such as up to age 10 as PolitiFact did this week, does not bring the total anywhere near 80. The vaccines are not blended in a vat. Needless to say, there is no vat of vaccines, Ratner said. They are packaged in a sterile manner and given by people who are trained to do so safely. And children already do receive their vaccinations over multiple visits to the doctor over the course of years, not during one visit as Trump suggested, though they may get multiple vaccines during some visits. We give multiple vaccines in a single visit because we try to get kids protection against important diseases as early as possible, Ratner said. The diseases that we vaccinate against cause serious disease or even death in young children. Delaying vaccines that we know are safe in childhood just gives kids additional time at risk without any benefit. He added, kids get more vaccines now than they did in the past because we are lucky enough to be able to protect them against more diseases now than we could in the past. Levy said Trump's desire to reduce the number of shots children have to take is reasonable, and that this could be achieved, for example, by developing better adjuvants, molecules that are added to vaccines to boost an immune response. But he said that needlessly splitting up the MMR vaccine as Trump proposed would mean more shots rather than fewer shots, and he said any future reduction needs to be science-driven. Adding that research shows the existing U.S. vaccine schedule has prevented more than 1 million deaths and tens of millions of hospitalizations in the past 20 years alone. Autism exists in Cuba. Trump said, I mean, there's a rumor, and I don't know if it's so or not, that Cuba, they don't have Tylenol because they don't have the money for Tylenol. And they have virtually no autism, okay? Tell me about that one. Cuba has paracetamol, the common international name for generic Tylenol. Though it's true that there are sometimes shortages in the country's government-run pharmacies, paracetamol remains widely available on the black market. And Cuba has autism, as Havana-based CNN international correspondent Patrick Ottman reported in the wake of Trump's remarks, and the publication Autism Spectrum News reported in a lengthy article in June. Though it's true that the known prevalence of autism in Cuba is low, the country has dedicated schools for children with autism, and has health professionals who specialize in addressing autism. An August article in the state-run media said the country of roughly 11 million people has approximately 3,500 people registered on the autism spectrum, but that's an obvious undercount of the true number of people with autism. There are Amish people with autism, Trump said. And by the way, I think I can say that there are certain groups of people that don't take vaccines and don't take any pills that have no autism. He cited the Amish as an example and added that they have essentially no autism. Braxton Mitchell, a professor at the University of Maryland School of Medicine who has worked with Amish communities for more than 30 years, said it's not true that the Amish categorically reject vaccines and pills, and not true that they have no autism at all. Childhood vaccination rates in Amish communities have long been lower than in the country as a whole, but they are not non-existent. And while Amish people sometimes prefer alternative treatments over modern medications, their communities do not completely shun pills like Tylenol. Regarding vaccines, some Amish choose to vaccinate their kids and some do not. So it is incorrect to say that Amish do not vaccinate, said Mitchell, co-director of the Amish Research Clinic in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which has a large Amish community. A claim was also made about use of Tylenol. I can tell you that Tylenol is used by many Lancaster Amish. Mitchell noted it's not clear what the prevalence of autism is in Amish communities, since there has been very little systematic data collected on the subject, but, bottom line, yes, autism does exist in the Amish. We do not know how its frequency compares to non-Amish. When Trump asked the chair of the Food and Drug Administration Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary if he wanted to comment on the subject, Makary said, "The Amish population are a very mixed group, so there's a subset that take vaccines, a subset that does not, and we know they have very low rates of chronic disease all across the board. The prevalence of autism 20 years ago was much higher than Trump said. There's no doubt that the known prevalence of autism has spiked in the last 20 years, which experts have attributed in large part to greater awareness of the symptoms and improvements in diagnostic practices. But Trump has repeatedly exaggerated the extent of the increase, and he did so again Monday. It used to be 1 in 20,000, then 1 in 10,000, and I would say that's probably 18 years ago. And now it's 1 in 31, but in some areas it's much worse than that, if you can believe it. 1 in 31, Trump said. It's true that the most recent known prevalence of autism in the U.S. is 1 in 31 children age 8, according to 2022 data published by the CDC. But it was much higher than 1 in 10,000 18 years ago. The known prevalence of autism was 1 in 125 in 2004 and 1 in 110 in 2006. Even in 2000, it was 1 in 150. While some of the earliest studies on the subject from the 1960s and 1970s estimated autism prevalence to be in the range of 2 to 4 per 10,000 children, that was much farther back than the 18 years ago Trump claimed. CNN's Deidre McPhillips contributed to this item. Up next, Trump links autism to acetaminophen use during pregnancy. Despite decades of evidence it's safe.
President Trump speaks to top military brass in Virginia. What the fuck is going on right here?
Watch live. President Trump delivers remarks to the Department of Defense. President Trump delivers remarks to the Department of Defense. 4:53. Local politician recounts encounter with Michigan gunman days before attack. 3:28. Tracking Assata Shakur. How a CNN intern landed an interview with the FBI's most wanted fugitive. 5:30. Judge Salas. Responsible language needs to come from the top down. 2:02. Man drives through barricade near Michigan church day after shooting. 0:32. FBI searches for a motive behind MI church attack. 2:12.
Is this all the breaking news? No. U.S. We'll go to politics again, because I wanted to get this whole update. Oh! They all about the Carly dude. Crash outs for Carly. You crash out for Carly.
In aftermath of Kirk's assassination, Republicans seek to galvanize support from young conservatives. By Eva McKind. 2 hours ago, attendees watched the memorial service for. Just days after Charlie Kirk's assassination, Vice President J.D. Vance hosted an episode of the Turning Point USA Leaders podcast to reflect on his political legacy and issue a call to action. Get involved, get involved, get involved, said Vance. Start a chapter of CUSA or get involved in the one that already exists. If you're older, volunteer for your local party. Write an op-ed in your local paper. Run for office, he added. With just over a month before high-stakes elections in New Jersey and Virginia, and a little more than a year from the midterms, several Republican candidates hope that Kirk's death will be a galvanizing moment to drive up turnout with younger conservatives. Turning Point USA was a critical part of President Donald Trump's voter turnout operation last year. Trump has credited Kirk and Turning Point, which did not respond to CNN requests for comment, with the gains he made with younger voters. Virginia Attorney General Jason Mears, who is running for re-election against Democratic candidate Jay Jones, says Republicans, particularly the young people he interacts with, are infuriated and heartbroken but determined to stand up in this moment, adding that voters frequently approach him to discuss the killing. Jason Meyers, Virginia Attorney General, speaks during a campaign event with Republican gubernatorial candidate Winsome Earl-Sears in Vienna, Virginia, on July 1st. Al Drago Bloomberg, Getty Images/file. So many people have either cheered it or excused it or minimized it, and that has shocked them and given them quiet resolve to make sure their voices are heard at the ballot box, Meyers told CNN. Virginia-based conservative radio host John Fredericks says he's seen a dramatic increase in engagement among voters on the right and curiosity about Republican gubernatorial candidate Winsome Earl-Sears, who trails her Democratic opponent Abigail Spanberger in public polls. The mantra here is, look, if you want to avenge Charlie's death, get off the keyboard. Get off of social media. It doesn't do crap. You want to send a message, you've got one opportunity to do it right now, and that's in Virginia, and that's early voting, Frederick said. Melina Llanos, president of the Virginia Young Democrats, has spent the last 6 weeks door-knocking in support of Democratic candidates. She doesn't believe Kirk's killing has dramatically shifted the political landscape in the state. She did spot a man wearing a button that read, "We are Charlie," when she went to vote.
I want to try something, right? I want to see how this goes, because I've never tried nothing like this on here before. We're going to find a Bible. I want to see what happens if you just let your phone read a Bible. And I see a lot of people on here reading Bibles right now.
John 1. The Word became flesh. 1 inch the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. 2 He was with God in the beginning. 3 Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. Download.
What do you mean download? Nothing was made that was made. Let's try to go somewhere else. I feel like that Bible one didn't work. Bible Gateway, maybe. Nope. It's not working. Official King James Bible online. We'll start with Genesis. I can't make them read this one either. Make it a desktop site. You gonna read the Bible online? See if this works a little bit better.
God, and the Word was God. 2 He was with God in the beginning. 3 Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. 4 inches him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. 5 The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. 6 There was a man sent from God whose name was John. 7 He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. 8 He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. 9 The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. 10 He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. 11 He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. 12 Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. 13 Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. 14 The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. 15 John testified concerning him. He cried out, saying, "This is the one I spoke about when I said, 'He who comes after me has surpassed me because he was before me.' 16 Out of his fullness we have all received grace in place of grace already given. 17 For the law was given through Moses, Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. 18 No one has ever seen God, but the one and only Son, who is himself God and is in closest relationship with the Father, has made him known. John the Baptist denies being the Messiah. 19 Now this was John's testimony when the Jewish leaders in Jerusalem sent priests and Levites to ask him who he was. 20 He did not fail to confess but confessed freely, I am not the Messiah. 21 They asked him, Then who are you? Are you Elijah? He said, I am not. Are you the prophet? He answered, No. 22 Finally they said, Who are you? Give us an answer to take back to those who sent us. What do you say about yourself? 23 John replied in the words of Isaiah the prophet, I am the voice of one calling in the wilderness, make straight the way for the Lord. 24 Now the Pharisees who had been sent 25 questioned him, Why then do you baptize if you are not the Messiah, nor Elijah, nor the prophet? 26 I baptize with water, John replied, but among you stands one you do not know. 27 He is the one who comes after me, the straps of whose sandals I am not worthy to untie.
Y'all pretend to like
20
the Bible. Y'all don't really like the Bible. Y'all Trump believers. Believers in Trump. I'm trying to get this government shutdown, never stopping thing. The last government shutdown was the longest. Wow. Huh?
The last government shutdown was the longest in more than 40 years. Here are all the recent shutdowns in one chart. By Jillian Roberts and Kanita Iyer. 5 hours ago. Congress is barreling toward a federal government shutdown, which is set to happen if the House and Senate are not able to reach a spending deal by the time the clock strikes 12:01 a.m. on Wednesday, October 1st. The last shutdown started on December 22, 2018, and went until January 25, 2019, 35 days, making it the longest government shutdown in more than 4 decades. It cost the United States an estimated $3 billion in lost GDP, according to the Congressional Budget Office. Here are all the government shutdowns since 1981. U.S. agencies were first instructed to stop normal operations during government funding lapses until Congress appropriates more money in the early 1980s. While government shutdowns have become less common in recent decades, there have been 6 since 1990. An increasingly partisan Washington has left Congress unable to resolve sticking points on spending for longer periods of time, with Republican Speaker Mike Johnson overseeing one of the narrowest House majorities in history, and the GOP lacking the 60 votes needed to overcome a Senate filibuster. The path to avoiding a shutdown remains unclear. CNN's Tammy Luby has more on which government services are expected to halt, and which could be expected to continue during this potential shutdown. The last government shutdown. The shutdown that began in December 2018 was a partial shutdown, where Congress had approved annual funding for certain agencies, allowing them to continue operations while other federal departments went dark. During that time, an estimated 800,000 people were employed at the shuttered federal agencies, and about 300,000 of those were furloughed, meaning they were not paid and asked not to report to work, according to the CBO. The rest were considered exempt from furlough, meaning they needed to report to work but could not receive pay. Both furloughed and exempted employees received back pay when their agencies reopened after the funding agreement was passed. The current Congress has not passed any of the 12 appropriations bills needed to fund the U.S. government. That means it would be a full government shutdown if a deal doesn't come to fruition by October 1st.
No, I'm trying to get this stuff working, chat. I'm trying to keep it all working.
And Israel will finish the job by itself. This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way. But it
Trying to get this on running for you guys. Okay, there we go.
Be done. We prefer the easy way, but it has to be done. All these goals must be achieved.
What's this guy do about the government shutdown now? Come on, bro. You gotta go like this. We'll get a little bit where we can read it. Read aloud. There we go.
September 29th, 2025. "10 hours, 39 minutes ago.
Okay. Read aloud.
Trump posts racist, AI-generated video of Schumer and Jeffries."
Well, this is old, though. This is old, chat. This is old. There ain't no live updates? They got a whole Trump page on here. They got a whole Trump page on here, chat.
Donald J. Trump. News on President Donald Trump and the Trump administration. Latest headlines. In aftermath of Kirk's assassination, Republicans seek to galvanize support from young conservatives. Congress has less than 24 hours to avert a shutdown. The odds don't look good. For subscribers, Trump-appointed Comey prosecutor repeatedly warned against political prosecutions. Now she's accused of leading one. Mitt Romney reveals he personally urged Biden administration to preemptively pardon Donald Trump. Trump says a Gaza ceasefire is closer than ever. The reality is more complicated. America at a glance. U.S. unemployment rate. The unemployment rate increased to 4.3% in August. 4.3%. U.S. CPI. The Consumer Price Index increased slightly to 2.9% for the last 12 months ending in August. 2.9%. U.S. GDP. The quarterly real gross domestic product, known as GDP, grew at an annualized rate of 3.8% in the second quarter of 2025. 3.8%. U.S. stock market. Dow Index. 46,321.
So it's looking like
0.01%. S&P 500 Index. 6,652. Minus 0.14%. NASDAQ Index. 22,529.
I'm gonna find this Trump live stream. Maybe he ain't live no more. Let's see, PBS.
Do that, and we're gonna be greater
we got
than
the
we
Trump
ever
live
were
stream.
before.
We found the Trump live stream. My bad, I'm onto my one phone. You know, this is the out in motion phone. Here we go, guys.
Fighting and winning machine. We want to fight. We want to win. And we want to fight as little as possible. You have to
Trump
count on
raised over 100K.
Because we don't want to.
No, that's PBS.
Trump
raised over 100K for
we could have
PBS.
entered those wars and settled them in a different way. Lose a lot of our troops. And we could have settled them, I guess, differently. Maybe not.
This motherfucker don't even got a noise
gate. We might not have been able to settle them. We just would have been in the middle of a lot of firepower. But when we do need it, you're going to be so ready. And you know it. But very importantly, with that goal in mind, I've committed to spending over $1 trillion on our military in 2026, and that's the most in the history of our country. $1 trillion. That's a lot of money. I hope you like that. Ma'ams and sirs, I hope you like it. That's a hell of a lot of money. We have the best of everything. Every branch is seeing major investments, and as I announced in the Oval Office in March. We are rapidly moving forward with the...
That sounds like a lie, though. That sounds like a lie, guy.
First ever sixth-generation fighter jet. I didn't name it. I did not name it. But
my guy said ma'ams and sirs. What about the genders in between?
Boeing came in and they said, sir, this is our submittal. It's the greatest fighting jet ever done. And, you know, they're testing all these planes. All the companies are testing, and this one tested like through the roof. And they said, we'd like to name it the F-47. I said, all right, let me think about it. Then after thinking for about 2 seconds, I said, okay. You know what that means, 47, I'm 47. So I'm 45, 46, and 47, yeah, if you think about it. I just don't want the credit for 46. I don't want to have their open borders and people coming in from all over the world, including jails and mental institutes. I don't want that on my record, but I like having it. We're investing tens of billions of dollars in modernizing our nuclear deterrence capabilities like never before. And we've begun construction on what we call the Golden Dome missile defense shield. It'll be the most sophisticated in the world. You watched it do well until they had some problems at the end with a little bit of a lack of ammunition, defensive ammunition, but they've got that taken care of. But I tell you, it's what we're doing is so good, and we deserve it. You know, we help other countries with it. We don't have it ourselves. And Canada called me a couple of weeks ago. They want to be part of it. To which I said, well, why don't you just join our country? You become 51, become the 51st state, and you get it for free.
Wonder how long Trump been on crack for that. What you guys think? You think Trump's on crack?
It does make a lot of sense. It actually makes, because they're having a hard time up there in Canada now. Because, as you know, with tariffs, everyone's coming into our country. We have more investment than we've ever had before. $17 trillion coming in. As an
what's
example,
up with Trump doing all this counting though?
Biden didn't have $1 trillion.
What you counting for, bro?
We have 17 trillion, more than that in 8 months coming in. And they're coming in from Canada, Mexico, from Europe, from all over. AI.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's the 10 presidential commandments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He's been the president for years. It made him an animal. He threw out all the rules to this shit. He ain't got no manual. There ain't no step-by-step booklet for him to get his game on track. He got his wig pushed back for some reason. He was on stage the next day. Rule number 2. I don't fucking know.
Auto plants. Everybody's coming back to the United States. Under my budget, we will be expanding the U.S. Navy by at least 19 ships next year, including submarines, destroyers, assault ships, and more. And it's going to be much more than that as we go along.
Rule number 2, always support the, I can't say that word on YouTube, but we get banned. Rule number 3, Trump done fucked everybody. He's fucking me and you right now. Rule number 4, I know you heard this before. Rule number 4, I know you heard this before. Never get high on Jeffrey Supply. Number 5, never keep no...
Because we basically don't build ships anymore. We do build submarines, but we don't build ships. You know, in the Second World War, there were freighters and different types, but we were doing a ship a day. And now we don't do ships. And I'm not a fan of some of the ships you do. I'm a very aesthetic person. I don't like some of the ships you're doing aesthetically. They say, oh, it's stealth. I say, that's not stealth. An ugly ship is not.
Number 5, never keep no documents where you rest at. I don't care if they want to build. Tell them, go to the hill. Number 6, all that credit, forget it. Or debt so high, we'll never fucking pay it. Number 7, he thinks it's number 5 and 7.
Necessary in order to say your stealth. By the way, the B-2 bombers were incredible. That is stealth. They went into that. I was with.
We all Trump for right now. We all Trump for right now. We'll holler at Trump in a little bit, guys. Let's see if we can get back to the front page of CNN. You guys know how I do it. I go to About CNN, and then we click on CNN.
Now in the president's hands. He can avoid a shutdown if he gets the Republican leader to go along with what we want, Schumer said Monday night, hours after Congress's top 4 party leaders met with Trump for a last-ditch meeting at the White House. But Republicans have accused Schumer of holding government funding hostage over their demands and insist any negotiations on those tax credits should not be tied to keeping the government.
I'm trying to fix it, guys. We're going to fix it.
I will work with you on all of those things. I think there's a lot of common ground, but let's leave the government funding out of it. Related article. Who would get blamed for a shutdown? Thune and his GOP conference have long believed that Schumer will cave, especially as the White House's own budget office has threatened mass firings if Congress allows a shutdown and cedes some of its spending authority to the executive branch. And if a shutdown does happen, the prevailing sense among congressional Republicans is that voters will blame Democrats for their demands, not the GOP for a no-strings-attached funding deal. If you want to have that debate, that's a debate to have. You don't hold government funding hostage for it, said GOP Senator Eric Schmidt of Missouri. Chuck Schumer is afraid of his own shadow, and he doesn't want to be perceived as working with President Trump, Schmidt said. That's a shame, because I think the American people are going to suffer because of it. Asked if there's any room for negotiations on Obamacare subsidies by Tuesday's midnight shutdown deadline, Republican Senator John Kennedy said, "Not unless Chuck stops smoking wizard weed.
They said we out here holding shit hostage. They said if you come through, you don't pay that money, you get held hostage. Yeah, a federal penitentiary for IRS debt.
We can negotiate the Obamacare subsidies and reform thereof, but we can't do it by midnight tomorrow night."
I just don't understand, right? They could take the national budget out of your check before you get your check. So why can't we take the national budget out of their check before they get their check?
Night, Kennedy added. That's what Senator Schumer demanded, and it's a very unserious proposal. Chuck.
Like, guys, we literally don't get paid until the government gets paid. So shouldn't the government not get paid until they pass a fucking budget?
Chuck wants a shutdown. Democrats have made clear for weeks they wanted a health care concession from Trump in exchange for helping to keep the government open. In recent days, Schumer and Jeffries have argued that any agreement.
And do you guys realize there hasn't been a budget? We haven't had a national budget in so fucking long, yo.
Agreement on health care, such as those subsidies, needs to go into law. They believe it's the only way to make sure the president keeps his word. We've got to deal with the health care collapse. We're going off a cliff, and we can't leave Vermonters and Americans high and dry, Democratic Senator Peter Welch said. We need the president to acknowledge that he has to abide by what Congress authorizes for spending. Welch expressed skepticism about the two sides reaching a deal before midnight tomorrow. I think the odds are against it right now, and I say that with a lot of regret, Welch said of the possibility of reaching an agreement, adding, "My hope is we'll keep the lights on, and if they go off, I want them to get back on as soon as possible." Senator John Fetterman, the lone Democrat who voted for the GOP's top Republicans, is that Democrats will start to bend after hearing public outcry over a loss of critical government services and as federal employees get furloughed or even fired. The GOP bill, which passed the House earlier this month largely along party lines, would extend government funding until late November and does not include extraneous policy provisions.
But along with the expiring Obamacare subsidies, Democrats have demanded a reverse to Medicaid enacted under Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act and to constrain his ability to cut.
I'm trying to fix it, guys. I don't know what's going on right here. I don't know.
Cut federal spending without Capitol Hill's consent. Thune and House Speaker Mike Johnson, emerging from Monday afternoon's closed-door meeting with Trump, said that they believe the Democratic position is unsustainable and they plan to pressure Democrats with repeated votes on the stopgap measure. Yes, Senate Majority Whip John Barrasso.
Alright, we're going to see how this is going to work. Put it straight on the edge. Push me to the edge. All my friends are feds. Push me to the edge. All my friends are feds. We're going to have to delete our cookies and all that. Delete that. More options. Delete all. Delete. Delete, 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 delete. Now we're going to go to CNN. See if we can find out what's going on right here. Okay, whatever. We agree to all that. If you think I agree, the government shutdown will begin. Oh, it says live updates too. Perfect. Come on, read it aloud, bro. Why you acting like this? You acting like you can't read it, bro.
Trump addresses military as government faces midnight shutdown. 3 minutes ago. Trump swerves through topics in speech to generals. From CNN's Kevin Liptak. President Donald Trump speaks to senior military leaders at Marine Corps Base Quantico on Tuesday. Andrew Harnick/Getty Images. President Donald Trump, more than 40 minutes into his speech to military brass, has meandered through several topics, speaking only sporadically from his prepared remarks and touching on a span of topics. It resembles most other speeches he delivers, even given the unusual setting and audience of the country's top military leaders.
What the fuck is going on right here? Maybe I go like this, right? Wait, hit the microphone off, I think. I don't know what the fuck is happening. We just went in and start over again.
Tariff, his assessment of former President Joe Biden as the autopen, his love of the 1950s television show, Victory at War, and the aesthetic shortcomings of the Navy's ships. At one point,
now we got it working. I think we got it working, guys. My bad. It just cut up. We got phones messing up. I gotta do updates and shit. You know. It's a weekday. What is going on right here? I don't know why it's not letting it read aloud. Supposed to address the military. How far did it go? It don't go to the whole thing, though. We're going to do a whole refresh. I'm not used to this not reading it. Like, it's been reading for days. And now I don't want to read.
Trump addresses military as government faces midnight shutdown. By Maureen Chowdhury, Andy Rose and Haley Britsky, CNN. Updated 10:11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Tuesday, September 30th, 2025. Play. Watch live. President Trump delivers remarks to the What we're covering. Defense meeting. President Donald Trump is delivering remarks to senior military leaders gathered from around the world in Quantico. What Hegseth said. During his speech, Hegseth pushed his vision of a warrior ethos for the military. He vowed the end of diversity efforts, said the military will require those in combat jobs to meet the highest male standard only, and added drill sergeants can put their hands on recruits to motivate them. Race against the clock. Meanwhile, the federal government will shut down at midnight unless Congress reaches a deal on funding. Republicans need at least 7 Democrats in the Senate to join them to pass a spending package under the chamber's rules. Tell us, previous shutdowns have stalled food inspections, canceled immigration hearings and delayed some lending to homebuyers. Would a shutdown affect you? Share your story here.
Now?
All. Catch up. Shut down. 20 posts. 7 minutes ago.
7 minutes ago.
Trump swerves through topics in speech to generals. From CNN's Kevin Liptak. President Donald Trump speaks to senior military leaders at Marine Corps Base Quantico on Tuesday. Andrew Harnick/Getty Images. President Donald Trump, more than 40 minutes into his speech to military brass, has meandered through several topics, speaking only sporadically from his prepared remarks and touching on a span of topics. It resembles most other speeches he delivers, even given the unusual setting and audience of the country's top military leaders. He's touched on his decision to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and the ensuing fallout with the Associated Press, his frustrated efforts to end the wars in Gaza and Ukraine, his bid for the Nobel Peace Prize, his love for the word tariff, his assessment of former President Joe Biden as the autopen, his love of the 1950s television show, Victory at War, and the aesthetic shortcomings of the Navy's ships. At one point, he recalled the moment last month when he ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be strategically positioned near Russia in response to what he said were aggressive remarks by Dmitry Medvedev, the country's former president and current deputy chairman of its Security Council. It was really a stupid person, mentioned the word nuclear, he said, concluding later, I call it the N-word. There are 2 N-words, and you can't use either of them. At another point, Trump declared some warships produced by the military ugly. I'm a very aesthetic person. I don't like some of the ships you're doing aesthetically, he pronounced. This post has been updated.
So hold on, I'm still trying to get this. Trump is mad he can't say the N-word. Trump, you're mad you can't say the N-word, Trump.
Updated with additional details. 10 minutes ago. HUD posts shutdown-related message blaming radical left ahead of looming midnight deadline. From CNN Samantha Waldenberg. Signage for the Department of Housing and Urban Development is seen on the Robert C. Weaver Federal Building in Washington, D.C., on July 8th. Kent Nishimura/Getty Images/file.
As you guys know, I'm over here catching up on the news as always, and I just found out Trump is mad that he can't say the N-word. Trump's like, why can't I say the N-word? I should be able to say the N-word because I'm president. Sometimes you can't say certain stuff, Trump.
The Department of Housing and Urban Development posted a new message on its website as of this morning, blaming the radical left ahead of the looming midnight deadline for a government shutdown. The radical left are going to shut down the government and inflict massive pain on the American people unless they get their $1.5 trillion wish list of demands. The Trump administration wants to keep the government open for the American people, a pop-up banner reads on the department's website. A CNN search of other cabinet-level departments shows that HUD is the only department with this type of message on its website. CNN has reached out to the department for more information on the messaging. The federal government will shut down at midnight unless Congress reaches a deal on funding. Republicans need at least 7 Democrats in the Senate to join them to pass a spending package under the chamber's rules. 16 minutes ago. Hegseth tells generals if they do not agree with him, do the honorable thing and resign. From CNN's Haley Britsky. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth speaks to senior military leaders at Marine Corps Base Quantico on Tuesday. Andrew Harnick/Getty Images. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth told senior military officers to do the honorable thing and resign if they did not agree with his views on diversity in the military's past COVID-19 vaccine mandate, or criticisms of transgender individuals. Generals and admirals were told females and males are the same thing, or that males who think they're females is totally normal. They were told that we need a green fleet and electric tanks. They were told to kick out Americans who refused an emergency vaccine. They followed civilian policies set by foolish and reckless political leaders. Our job, my job, has been to determine which leaders simply did what they must to answer the prerogatives of civilian leadership, and which leaders are truly invested in the woke department and therefore incapable of embracing.
So is it males and females the same thing? I don't know, guys. You gotta let me know.
Embracing the War Department
I didn't go to school with you guys, so I don't know what you guys know.
and executive new lawful orders, Hegseth said. The sooner we have the right people, the sooner we can advance the right policies, he added. But if the words I'm speaking today are making your heart sink, then you should do the honorable thing and resign. Hegseth took the opportunity to criticize retired general officers who have also come under attack by President Donald Trump, including former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Mark Milley and former commander of U.S. Central Command General Frank McKenzie. The new compass heading is clear: out with the Chiarellis, the McKenzies, and the Millies, and in with the Stockdales, the Schwarzkopfs, and the Pattons. More leadership changes will be made, of that I'm certain, not because we want to, but because we must. 39 minutes ago. Trump says he's never seen a room so silent as he begins address to military brass. From CNN's Kevin Liptak. President Donald Trump speaks to senior military leaders at Marine Corps Base Quantico on Tuesday. Alex Wong/Getty Images. President Donald Trump seemed to preempt what he expected to be a muted audience reaction as he began his remarks to generals and admirals in Quantico. I've never walked into a room so silent, Trump said to laughs. Military brass, by tradition, put forward a nonpartisan posture. They listened mostly silently earlier to Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth. Trump suggested he'd been forewarned about a quiet crowd. I was told that, sir, you won't hear a murmur in the room, he said. I said we had to loosen these guys up a little bit. He joked that anyone who didn't appreciate his message could leave, and quit. If you don't like what I'm saying, you can leave the room. Because there goes your rank, there goes your future, Trump said to laughs. 29 minutes ago.
He said he told that hoe, if you don't like this shit, you can leave, hoe. Like, you don't want a hoe, you don't want a hoe, you don't want a hoe, then go.
29 minutes ago. Senior officers offer largely muted response to Hegseth's speech, consistent with apolitical norms. From CNN's Haley Britsky. Throughout the speech by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth on Tuesday morning at Quantico, Virginia, the crowd of senior military officers were largely quiet, aside from a few moments of chuckling or scattered applause. The Department of Defense denied credentials to CNN Pentagon reporters to cover the speech, but it was broadcast. The room stood at attention quietly as Hegseth departed the stage after his remarks, in which he criticized military leadership for allowing woke ideologies to spread and standards to fall, vowing to overhaul all of that and more. There was some delayed applause after Hegseth exited the stage. The muted response is consistent with how general and flag officers respond during political speeches such as the State of the Union, which the chiefs of staff for each branch of the military attend but do not participate in order to maintain an apolitical appearance, as the military is required to work with officials belonging to whichever political party is in the White House. 51 minutes ago. Words like bullying and toxic leadership are being weaponized against leaders, Hegseth tells top generals. From CNN's Haley Britsky.
He said, I want to be a bully. I came here to be a bully. Hey, you ain't going to let me be a bully. Now, I'm going to bully you in the mouth.
Britsky. The Defense Department is starting a full review of how words like bullying, hazing, and toxic leadership are used as part of accountability efforts, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said Tuesday, adding those terms have been weaponized to undercut efficient military commanders. The definition of toxic has been turned upside down, and we're correcting that. That's why today, at my direction, we're undertaking a full review of the department's definitions of so-called toxic leadership, bullying and hazing to empower leaders to enforce standards without fear of retribution or second-guessing, Hegseth said. Of course you can't do like nasty bullying and hazing. We're talking about words like bullying and hazing and toxic. They've been weaponized and bastardized inside our formations,
we got
undercutting
some breaking
commanders.
News. Candace Owens wants to say something to Charlie Kirk's pastor. What's she
I'm not
talking
going to
about?
let it go, okay? You're not going to emotionally use some jujitsu, and I'm referring here to Roy or Rob McCoy, who says, I'm Charlie's pastor, and here's the truth, or whatever it is, to look the other way right
Yo, that shit crazy. I can't say nothing like that on YouTube, but Candace can.
now, okay? You're not going to tell me that I have to feel too bad to investigate who shot my friend in front of my face. So, stop the nonsense. This is what Charlie's pastor passed around to all of the people that were intimidating Charlie leading up to his death.
Pass the duchy to the left one lane.
It's funny that Charlie's pastor couldn't find his voice when Bibi Netanyahu was lying about Charlie. Here's pastor. You know what he's saying are lies. No, he didn't find his voice saying anything about Bibi Netanyahu. Candace investigating things? Yeah, that's got to stop. Here's what he wrote. Okay, what's his name? Rob McCoy. He wrote, Charlie Kirk was my friend and I was his pastor. I want to simply say this regarding Candace Owens. Charlie Kirk was a friend to Candace and never publicly spoke poorly of her, though he disagreed with her. He never operated nor entertained gossip or any...
But the thing is, right, I can say one thing about Candace Owens. Candace Owens ain't saying nothing bad about Charlie Kirk. If anything, for me watching this stuff going on with Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk, it has me feel like Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens was probably messing around before Candace Owens met her husband or whatever. So, I don't know, chat. What do you guys think? Do you think Candace Owens was messing around with Charlie? Do you guys think they was doing coke and meth and shit together? I'm pretty sure they was. You know, I could be wrong, but I could be right too. Okay, we got 2 for the first word. 2 Senate Democrats.
Senate Democrats who voted for stopgap funding bill in March won't say how they'll vote tonight. From CNN's Allison Main and Manu Raju. Senator Gary Peters, one of 10 senators in the Democratic caucus who voted for a stopgap bill to keep government open in March, would not say this morning how he plans to vote this time. You'll see what I'll do in a little bit, he told CNN. Government funding will lapse at midnight if Republicans don't reach a deal with Democrats to supply the needed votes to pass a stopgap measure. Senator Maggie Hassan, who also joined Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer in declining to block the GOP-led funding plan in March, wouldn't answer when asked whether she would vote for the House-passed bill later in the day. So far, Senator John Fetterman is the only Democrat in the chamber who has publicly said he would vote for the 7-week bill. At least 7 Democratic votes are needed to advance the bill and avert a shutdown. Democratic leaders say they want changes to health care policy before voting for the bill. Read more on the government shutdown looming over Capitol Hill. 9 minutes ago. Trump swerves through topics in speech to generals. From CNN's Kevin Liptak. President Donald Trump speaks to senior military leaders at Marine Corps Base Quantico on Tuesday. Andrew Harnick / Getty Images. President Donald Trump, more than 40 minutes into his speech to military brass, has meandered through several topics, speaking only sporadically from his prepared remarks. It resembles most other speeches he delivers, even given the unusual setting and audience of the country's top military leaders. He's touched on his decision to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and the ensuing fallout with the Associated Press, his frustrated efforts to end the wars in Gaza and Ukraine, his bid for the Nobel Peace Prize, his love for the word tariff, his assessment of former President Joe Biden as the autopen, his love of the 1950s television show, Victory at War, and the aesthetic shortcomings of the Navy's ships. At one point, he recalled the moment last month when he ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be
Trump got touched by an angel.
Strategically...
And it wasn't a Charlie angel. I heard it was a Jeffrey angel.
Strategically positioned near Russia in response to what he said were aggressive remarks by Dmitry Medvedev, the country's former president and current deputy chairman of its security.
Now, I'm going to keep it 100 with you guys, right? And everybody might be out here thinking this or thinking that or whatever. I'll tell you why Trump stopped talking about Epstein. Trump stopped talking about Epstein because there's tapes of him messing with Diddy. Trump got railed by Diddy, and Trump don't want all these MAGA supporters knowing that he's down low with Diddy. So, like, Trump is, like, defending the pedophile so we don't find out that he's,
Security Council. It was really a stupid person, mentioned the word nuclear, he said, concluding later, I call it the N-word. There are 2 N-words, and you can't use either of them. At another point, Trump declared some warships produced by the military ugly. I'm a very aesthetic person. I don't like some of the ships you're doing aesthetically, he pronounced. This post has been updated with additional details. 22 minutes ago. HUD posts shutdown-related message blaming radical left ahead of looming midnight deadline. From CNN Samantha Waldenberg. Signage for the Department of Housing and Urban Development is seen on the Robert C. Weaver Federal Building in Washington, D.C., on July 8. Kent Nishimura / Getty Images / file. The Department of Housing and Urban Development posted a new message on its website as of this morning, blaming the radical left ahead of the looming midnight deadline for a government shutdown. The radical left are going to shut down the government and inflict massive pain on the American people unless they get their $1.5 trillion wish list of demands. The Trump administration wants to keep the government open for the American people, a pop-up banner reads on the department's website. A CNN search of other cabinet-level departments shows that HUD is the only department with this type of message on its website. CNN has reached out to the department for more information on the messaging. The federal government will shut down at midnight unless Congress reaches a deal on funding. Republicans need at least 7 Democrats in the Senate to join them to pass a spending package under the chamber's rules.
Did he get out of jail today?
16 minutes ago. Hegseth tells generals if...
All this stuff tells me that they're probably covering something up. Diddy release. With all this government shutdown, that just got me feeling like Diddy is getting out. October 3rd. We're going to see what's going on with Diddy right now. They want 11 years. They're going to give Diddy 11 years for fucking the president. They want to give Diddy 11 years for fucking the president. That's crazy.
Prosecutors seek over 11 years in prison for Sean Diddy Combs. New York. Prosecutors urged a New York federal judge Tuesday to send Sean Diddy Combs to prison for over 11 years following his conviction on prostitution-related charges, citing one of his accusers who said she lives in fear of the music mogul.
They said Diddy fucked every president from Reagan to Trump, and it's on tape.
Mogul's release from detention. His crimes of conviction are serious and have warranted sentences over 10 years in multiple cases for defendants who, like Sean Combs, engaged in violence and put others in fear, they wrote in a pre-sentence submission requesting at least 11 years and 3 months in prison. They filed their sentencing recommendation shortly after midnight, including letters from some of his accusers describing how his violence and demands had impacted their lives. They called Combs unrepentant and said Combs had conceded his acts of violence and abuse throughout his trial, but, incredibly, he now argues that his victims should shoulder the blame. Combs, 55, has remained jailed since his July conviction on charges related to arranging male sex workers to travel to hotels or residences where he directed them to have sex with his girlfriends. Combs faces sentencing Friday. The elaborate days-long, drug-fueled sexual events were often filmed by Combs. Defense attorneys have asked that he be sentenced to no more than 14 months in prison. Sentencing is set for Friday. In July, Combs was convicted of 2 charges for violating the Mann Act, which outlaws interstate commerce.
Trump and Diddy sitting in a tree. Pissing. First comes P, then comes...
Commerce related to prostitution, for arranging the paid sexual encounters between his girlfriends and male sex workers. Each count carries a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison. The same jury acquitted the Bad Boy Records founder of racketeering, conspiracy and sex trafficking charges that could have resulted in a life sentence.
Diddy?
Last week, the defense submitted its pre-sentence arguments, saying Combs has suffered enough during his nearly 13 months behind bars that he should be freed soon. They wrote that he became a changed man in a Brooklyn federal lockup, where he has been under constant suicide watch and learned to react calmly to threats rather than violently, even when a fellow inmate confronted him with a shiv. They said Combs has realized that his overuse of drugs, including some prescribed by doctors, had contributed to violent acts he participated in. Prosecutors say Combs is not the victim. Prosecutors said Combs was now trying to cast himself as a victim.
Well, Diddy hasn't been able to bang no guys because he's been in solitary. Now, if they let boys in Diddy's cell, he won't want to leave.
He is not the victim, they wrote. The court should focus on the very real effects that the defense...
Even though Diddy likes fucking white boys with orange skin.
Defendant's conduct had on the lives of the actual victims, his victims. At trial, 2 of Combs' former girlfriends testified that they felt forced to participate in the drug-fueled sex marathons with male sex workers as Combs watched and sometimes filmed. R&B singer Cassandra Cassie Ventura described being beaten by Combs when she displeased him during their decade-long relationship. Another ex-girlfriend, testifying under the pseudonym Jane, said she felt pressured to perform sexually with male sex workers. She testified that an enraged Combs once put her in a chokehold and punched her in the face. In a letter accompanying the prosecutor's submission, Cassie wrote that she testified while 9 months pregnant during Combs' trial, in front of a packed courtroom about the most traumatic and horrifying chapter in my life. I testified that from age 19, Sean Combs used violence, threats, substances, and control over my career to trap me in over a decade of abuse. Cassie says she still suffers from nightmares. Cassie wrote that Combs controlled her like a puppet. These events were degrading and disgusting, leaving me with infections, illnesses, and days of physical and emotional exhaustion before he demanded it all again. Sex acts became my full-time job, used as the only way to stay in his good graces, she said. Cassie said she still has nightmares and flashbacks on an everyday basis and requires psychological care to cope. My worries that Sean Combs or his associates will come after me and my family is my reality. I have in fact moved my family out of the New York area and am keeping as private and quiet as I possibly can because I am so scared that if he walks free, his first actions will be swift retribution towards me and others who spoke up about his abuse at trial, Cassie said. The AP does not typically name people who say they have been sexually abused unless they come forward publicly, as Cassie has. In an indictment, prosecutors asserted that Combs used his fame, wealth and violence to force and manipulate Cassie and Jane, now ex-girlfriends, into the sexual performances he called freak-offs or hotel nights. After Combs was convicted, Judge Arun Subramanian immediately refused a defense request to grant him bail. He denied it again in August as he rejected Combs' $50 million bail proposal, saying the hip-hop impresario hadn't proven that he did not pose a flight risk or danger, nor shown an exceptional circumstance after a conviction that otherwise requires detention.
My bad, guys. My bad. The phone was ringing. And the phone was right there. But there was Diddy in trouble. And he was chilling with Donald. And Diddy was banging Donald right there. We're doing a whole little update, and then we're going to get you back on this long zone.
What we're covering. Defense meeting. President Donald Trump is delivering remarks to senior military leaders gathered from around the world in Quantico. What Hegseth said. During his speech, Hegseth pushed his vision.
Latest headlines. Catholics hold a Supreme Court majority. How does faith affect decisions? This is interesting. Let's see. Oh, no. Wrong one. Read aloud.
Catholics hold a Supreme Court majority. How does faith affect decisions? By Joan Biskupic, CNN chief Supreme Court analyst. 5 hours ago. An anti-abortion protester holds a cross. Justice Anthony Kennedy considered quitting the Supreme Court over abortion. Kennedy, who served from 1988 to 2018, makes the revelation in a new book as he explains how he balanced his Catholic faith and ultimately cast the deciding vote in 1992 that saved abortion rights for the next 3 decades. His writings in a recent book by Justice Amy Coney Barrett, a conservative Catholic who provided the key vote in 2022 to end a constitutional right to obtain an abortion, provide a rare window into personal conflicts regarding
What the fuck is going on right here? Nah, come on, bro.
Regarding religion and the law. Catholics have increasingly dominated the High Court and prompted debate over how the justices' faith influences their decisions. The books arrive at a larger moment in America as Christian nationalism appears to be growing and debate over faith and politics has escalated. Because of my ever-constant belief that life must be protected from the moment of conception, Kennedy wrote in his book to be published on October 14th, I struggled with the idea that the Constitution should allow some choice to end a pregnancy. Kennedy says he was particularly torn during the 1992 case Planned Parenthood versus Casey, when the justices were deciding whether to affirm or reverse Roe versus Wade, the milestone that made abortion legal nationwide. The struggle led me to wonder whether it would be wrong for me, morally, to stay on the court if doing so would require me to rule under the law that women have the right to end a pregnancy in its early, pre-viability stage, Kennedy writes. My conclusion, reached in private and without discussion with others, was to stay on the court. Today's Supreme Court, controlled by justices more solidly conservative than Kennedy, has permitted greater mixing of church and state, through a coach's prayers at public school football games, government financing of sectarian education, and religious monuments on government land. Related article. How the Roberts Court became the Trump Court. The court has also moved rightward on social policy issues imbued with a religious dimension, such as reproductive rights and LGBTQ rights. The latter will soon be tested again, when the court in October hears a dispute over state efforts to prohibit healthcare professionals from engaging in conversion therapy with minors to change their sexual orientation or gender identity. The justices will also take up a challenge to state bans on trans athletes in school sports. In a case earlier this year, as the right-wing majority let states ban puberty blockers and hormone therapy for youth seeking to transition to match their gender identity, Barrett suggested she opposed granting transgender identity the same anti-discriminatory protections that the Constitution provides based on race and sex. University of Virginia law professor Douglas Laycock, who has long focused on cases involving the First Amendment guarantees of religion, says people naturally wonder how the justices' faith plays into their decisions. There's lots of speculation about how religion is influencing them, he said. It's always useful to know how they approach cases. Yet Laycock cautions that explanations may be shaded by a kind of wishful thinking. These are people resolving what appear to be deep, internal conflicts, he said. Retired Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy stands in the House of Representatives on March 7, 2024, ahead of President Joe Biden's third State of the Union address. Sean Thu Poole, Reuters, file. How Kennedy became the swing vote. Both Kennedy and Barrett, appointed in 2020 and still sitting, have been pivotal justices. Their new books and respective records demonstrate how much the court has changed over time on controversies that touch on religion. Kennedy ended up casting the key vote to reaffirm the 1973 Roe v. Wade case, concluding the Constitution protected a right to abortion before viability, that is, the point at which a fetus can survive outside the womb. That was the law until 2022, when Barrett went in the opposite direction and provided the fifth vote to strike down Roe. In Listening to the Law, published in September, Barrett defended her vote in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Center. While she writes about her Catholicism in the context of the death penalty, she avoids any mention of her faith as she explained why she rejected Roe. Related article. Exclusive, Justice Amy Coney Barrett defends overturning Roe v. Wade and reveals Supreme Court dynamics in new book. Kennedy writes in his book that he disliked being described as the court's swing vote, but the centrist conservative constantly made the difference in important cases. An appointee of President Ronald Reagan, Kennedy navigated between the right and left-wing blocs, over time aligning more with the left on social issues. My colleagues knew, too, that religious and traditional family values had led me to feel some personal conflict over these matters, Kennedy wrote as he discussed his votes on gay rights in life, law and liberty. Because my colleagues knew of these tensions, and the cases looked as if they would be closely divided, the opinions were assigned to me. On gay rights, Kennedy clashed most with fellow Catholic Antonin Scalia, with whom he served for nearly his whole time, until Scalia's death in 2016. Kennedy reveals in his book that after the court's 2015 opinion declaring a right to same-sex marriage, Scalia rarely spoke to him or attended the justices' lunches. Such differences between Kennedy and Scalia offer a reminder that the court's conservative Catholics cover a range. There was an even greater difference with their Catholic colleague William Brennan, an unyielding liberal. Brennan sat from 1956 to 1990 and died in 1997. In 1973, when Roe was decided, Brennan was the only Catholic on the Supreme Court. I wouldn't under any circumstances condone an abortion in my private life, he said, according to a 2010 Brennan biography by Seth Stern and Stephen Wormiel. But that has nothing to do with whether or not those who have different views are entitled to have them and are entitled to be protected in their exercise of them. That's my job in applying and interpreting the Constitution. There are now 6 justices on the right wing who are either practicing Catholics, Chief Justice John Roberts and Justices Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Brett Kavanaugh and Barrett, or were raised Catholic, Neil Gorsuch, now an Episcopalian. A 7th Catholic justice, Sonia Sotomayor, firmly resides on the liberal wing. Among those current Catholics, Alito has been most outspoken in his views. He has headlined Catholic-sponsored events and regularly contends that religion is under siege. Last year in a speech to graduates of Franciscan University of Steubenville in Ohio, he said, "Freedom of religion is also imperiled. When you venture into the world you may well find yourself in a job or a community or a social setting when you will be pressured to endorse ideas you don't believe, or to abandon core beliefs. It will be up to you to stand firm." Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett speaks at the Reagan Library in Simi Valley, California, on September 9th. Mario Thomas/Getty Images. The dogma lives loudly within you. Barrett says in her book that she was surprised her Catholicism was raised in a 2017 hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee, when President Donald Trump first nominated her for a seat on a Chicago-based U.S. appellate court. Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein referred to the writings of Barrett, who was then a University of Notre Dame law professor. The conclusion one draws, Feinstein said, is that the dogma lives loudly within you. And that's of concern when you come to big issues that large numbers of people have fought for years in this country. Some Republican senators said Barrett had been wrongly confronted with a religious test, and even Feinstein's Democratic colleagues thought she had awkwardly raised the issue. For her 2020 Supreme Court hearing, Democratic senators largely avoided questions involving religion or her association with the Christian group People of Praise. In her book, Barrett writes, without naming Feinstein, who has since died, some suggest that people of faith have a particularly difficult time following the law rather than their moral views. I faced that criticism as a Catholic, most sharply when the Senate Judiciary Committee conducted a hearing to consider my nomination to the 7th Circuit. I'm not sure why. Related article. Here are the Supreme Court precedents that targeting hate speech would violate. She then adds, fortunately for the health of our country, people of faith are not the only Americans with firm convictions about right and wrong. Non-religious judges also have deeply held moral commitments, which means that they too face conflicts between those commitments and the demands of the law. A secular humanist who passionately believes that access to abortion is a moral imperative must set aside her views, no less than the judge whose faith informs a moral objection to abortion. Barrett referred to her personal opposition to capital punishment and her votes to uphold the death penalty. For me, death penalty cases drive home the collision between the law and my personal beliefs, she writes. Long before I was a judge, before I was even a member of the bar, I co-authored an academic article expressing a moral objection to capital punishment. She then noted that she cast a vote in 2022 with the majority to reinstate a death sentence for Jakar Tsarnaev, convicted in the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing. Swearing to apply the law faithfully means deciding each case based on my best judgment about what the law is, she writes. If I decide a case based on my judgment about what the law should be, I'm cheating. Both Barrett and Kennedy make clear that their Catholicism is central to their personal identities. Kennedy ended up aligning less with church teachings. At the time he was conflicted over his Catholicism and abortion rights, Kennedy concluded, to resign in effect would have been to say that the judicial oath to protect constitutional rights is not binding in difficult or controversial cases. And as a practical matter, in those times, it was possible that my successor would be less concerned about protecting the unborn. A man cheers during a rally in St. Paul, Minnesota, celebrating the U.S. Supreme Court striking down an anti-gay law from Colorado, in May 1996. Jerry Holt /Star Tribune /Getty Images /file. Scalia and gay rights. Kennedy suggests that his decisions favoring gay rights came with less anguish. But this is where he fought with Scalia, a fellow Catholic of the same generation. Both were born in 1936, and similarly appointed by Reagan. When Kennedy authored his first major opinion favoring LGBTQ interests, in a 1996 case that struck down a Colorado state ballot initiative that prevented localities from protecting gay and lesbian rights, he was startled by Scalia's dissenting views. The Kennedy majority had said the voter initiative violated the constitutional guarantee of equal protection and had seemed inexplicable by anything but animus. Related article. A little snark, a little sarcasm, how dissenting opinions catch our attention. Scalia countered in his dissenting opinion, this court has no business imposing upon all Americans the resolution favored by the elite class from which members of this institution are selected, pronouncing that animosity toward homosexuality
It might not be over. It stopped talking. It stopped talking.
Homosexuality is evil. In his new book, Kennedy writes, the vehemence of the dissent, and of Justice Scalia's dissents in later cases on the subject, truly surprised and disappointed me and a number of my colleagues. About 2 decades after that ruling in Romer v. Evans, their relations worsened when Kennedy crafted the 2015 Obergefell v. Hodges decision allowing same-sex marriage nationwide, and Scalia penned a harsh dissent. After Obergefell was announced in June and our new session began in October, Nino rarely came to lunch with us or stopped by to chat, Kennedy writes, adding that his children were upset by the dissent's rare personal attack on Kennedy. Then in early February 2016, Scalia visited Kennedy in his chambers. Referring to Scalia by his nickname, Kennedy wrote, Nino said he had come to regret deeply the tone of his Obergefell dissent and its personal references. He apologized for being intemperate. We both smiled, and the matter was resolved. Scalia was about to leave for a hunting trip in Texas. Kennedy recalled him saying, Tony, this is my last long trip. Scalia died a little over a week later while on that trip. Those parting words were the last we ever spoke to each other. Up next. Supreme Court agrees to reconsider precedent that limits who Trump can fire. 4-minute read. Trump asks Supreme Court.
Mitt Romney did what?
Mitt Romney reveals he personally urged Biden administration to preemptively pardon Donald Trump. By Sarah Boxer. 9 hours ago. Mitt Romney answers questions in his office. Former Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney revealed Monday night that he called the White House during the Biden administration when special counsel Jack Smith was investigating Donald Trump to urge President Joe Biden to preemptively pardon him. I called a member of the White House, one of the senior advisors to President Biden. And I said, if the Justice Department decides to indict President Trump, I hope President Biden will immediately eliminate that, and that he will provide a pardon immediately. Why? Number one, I don't want the anger and the hate and the vitriol. But number two, we just can't begin to be prosecuting political opponents, Romney said during a conversation with CNN's Dana Bash at an event hosted by Drew University in Morristown, New Jersey. Pardoning at that point would have been a way to make that very clear, added Romney. What did they say back to you? Asked Bash. They didn't do that, Romney said, smiling. That revelation came while discussing the Trump administration's recent indictment of former FBI Director James Comey, which Romney said he disagrees with. The idea that the system of justice is used to punish political opponents is a very dangerous path to go down. I just don't think that's the right path to go down. I'd go down a different path, he added. Romney said last year that if he were Biden he would have immediately pardoned Trump once the Justice Department brought indictments. Romney also offered up his opinion of why Trump is pursuing Comey: humiliation. The most powerful negative emotion is humiliation. If you've been humiliated, the response is the most significant, Romney said. And I think President Trump, when he was not in office, was humiliated by these actions where he sat in a New York courtroom at the defendant table being chastised by a judge and being attacked by a prosecutor who in his campaign
and said he was going to bring
Donald Trump an indictment and put him on trial. Now, Romney says Trump is doing exactly what he had promised during his re-election campaign. He said he was going to have revenge and retribution, and he is, and he's trying to have a stronger executive branch because he and the people around him believe that the executive branch is too weak and that it needs to have more power, he said. Bash asked if Romney feels that Trump's aggressive use of the executive branch is constitutional. In some cases, yes, probably in some cases, no. We'll see what the Supreme Court says, he responded. Romney also said he doesn't want the court to allow Trump to remove Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. I think that's a huge mistake. The challenge is the Constitution doesn't actually describe independent agencies. During his own run for president in 2012, Romney was famously mocked by President Barack Obama for saying that Russia posed America's greatest geopolitical threat. Today, Romney's warnings are proving prescient. Romney said he had a hard time watching Trump's summit in Alaska with Russian President Vladimir Putin. We talk about humiliation, but Vladimir Putin, come to Alaska and have a red carpet. Oh boy, this is unimaginable. And we just have to stand up for our friends in Ukraine, he said. I'm not a tariff guy. Romney said, I'm not a tariff guy, and that he thinks the aggressive way President Trump is imposing tariffs is wrong. In the past, we've tried to build power by making friends around the world and bringing people here, legal immigrants and H-1B visa and so forth. We've been building power. He's saying we've been building power too long. We want to exercise it, said Romney, adding in disbelief. Going after Canada. For Pete's sake, Canada. Though he said China deserves high tariffs, it should be coordinated with allies to really put the squeeze on that regime. The former senator called Trump's tariffs inflationary and said he is now going to the grocery store and cooking meals a few days a week at home. Romney said he sees the high prices gripping U.S. consumers firsthand, which he considered a major problem for Republicans. I am shocked at the prices in the grocery store. I mean, everything is $5 or more, Romney said. He admitted that he has a taste for a high-protein cereal that now costs $10. It's unbelievable to me the price of these things. And it only pours like, for bowls. J.D. Vance 2028? Romney told Jake Tapper in December that he thought J.D. Vance would be the next GOP presidential nominee and stands by that still. He said Vance, whom Romney called brilliant, will not only be the Republican nominee in 2028, but also has a strong chance of becoming president. I'm not saying that's my preference, but I'm saying we'll see that the Democrats are able to put up, Romney told the crowd and added, I don't have a home in either political party. It's a unique position for the former bearer of the Republican Party to be in. Romney traced his compass back to a lesson from his father, former Michigan Governor George Romney, who taught him, there is no pain like being indicted by your own conscience. Related gallery, photos. Romney's early life. Attack on a church is unimaginable. Romney harkened back to his Michigan roots when asked by Bash about the devastating shooting at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc, Michigan on Sunday. Whether it's that church or any church, an attack on a religious institution where people are worshiping is unimaginable, unthinkable, and inexcusable, Romney stated. Romney, who is Mormon, told Bash he has cousins who were worshipers at the congregation. My church has a heritage of having faced persecution in the past. And you wonder, well, are we in for another bout of this? He said while also lamenting the recent shooting at a Catholic church and rise in anti-Semitism as well. Violence has also taken a personal turn for Romney with the assassination of Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University. He told Bash that 2 of his grandchildren attend the school. It becomes associated with this terrible act of what presumably was a very troubled young man, Romney said. Utah Governor Spencer Cox has steadfastly spoken out against the toxicity of social media and its role in the shooting. Romney says Cox has distinguished himself by drawing that line during this tragedy.
Alright guys, we're going to wrap this show up for about an hour. And then in about an hour, we're going to all be back. I'm going to get these phones charged up and get ready for round 2. So, look forward to WTFFN News at Noon.